Thomas Edison lost the battle that would define his legacy, and he lost it on the ground he himself had helped forge, that of practical electricity. Today, every time you turn on a light, you are using your rival's system, not his. Tonight you will confirm that defeat. Every cable in your house, every outlet in your wall, is the silent vote of a war that was decided in the shadows. How could the celebrated inventor of the practical light bulb lose the battle for the system that would light up the world? The answer involves two formidable adversaries, an industrialist who had already revolutionized the railroads, and a visionary engineer born in the Austrian Empire. And it reveals something uncomfortable about genius, that being right first does not guarantee being right forever. We are in the late 19th century. The great cities are beginning to light up with electricity, but behind that prodigy, one of the fiercest corporate rivalries in history is being waged. It was not a war of cannons. It was a war of volts, wires, and municipal contracts. Edison had invented the first practical and affordable light bulb, but a light bulb without electricity is just glass and filament. He knew it. That is why he did not settle for the lamp. He wanted to control how the energy reached every home. His answer was direct current. Electricity flows constantly in one direction, like water in a straight channel. Safe, predictable. But it had a problem that was not a minor technical detail. It was a lethal problem. Direct current could not travel. Physics was relentless. At low voltage, the resistance of the wires dissipated the energy as heat, limiting its reach to a few kilometers. As historian Jill Jonies documents, had Edison's system prevailed, every few kilometers a large coal-fired generating plant would have been required. To supply a city like New York, a great number of them would have been needed, saturating the air with smoke and driving costs to unsustainable levels. Imagine that world, every neighborhood with its own power plant. A short distance away, a smoking chimney endlessly feeding a boiler. The shores of New York, the suburbs of Chicago, the valleys of California, all dotted with power plants, like lighthouses of an industrial age without horizon. It was not a national system. It was a collection of electrical islands, each one isolated, dependent on its own coal plant. Each island required its own unceasing flow of coal and its own maintenance crew, a logistical nightmare that made it impossible to dream of a national grid. Coal arriving without rest, smoke covering every street, distance turned into a border. But if the flaw was so obvious, how could a genius like Edison not see it? The answer was on the battlefield. On the other side stood George Westinghouse, an industrialist who had already invented the air brake for railroads, an innovation that was a decisive advance for railway safety and earned him a reputation as a practical engineer and bold entrepreneur. Westinghouse looked at Edison's system and saw its Achilles heel. He saw an electricity that did not push the current in a straight line, but undulated, reversing its direction 60 times per second. That alternating current possessed a property that direct current did not have. It could be converted to different voltages by means of a transformer. And that difference, seemingly minor, changed everything. It was the difference between scattering windmills across every rooftop or building a single wind farm for an entire region. A single generating plant could supply a great city and its surroundings. Geography stopped being the enemy. Distance stopped being the limit. But Westinghouse could not do it alone. To bring that vision to life, he needed the intellectual partner that was missing. And then came Nikola Tesla, a visionary engineer from the Austrian Empire. Edison did not develop a viable system for distributing electricity on a national scale. That credit belonged jointly to Westinghouse and Tesla. Tesla helped perfect the alternating current system. He developed polyphase generators and induction motors, opening the door to a future where a single high-voltage line could replace 20 coal plants. But if the advantage of alternating current was so obvious, why did the war not end in months? The answer lies in the motors. The conflict was not technical. It was visceral, corporate, and silent. Edison was defending his empire, his patents, and his pride. And in the realm of electric motors, the direct current systems held an initial advantage. There was enormous commercial potential in perfecting those motors for machines and factories. Edison was not defending a relic. He was defending a business that still worked. His motors ran streetcars, elevators, industrial machinery. Alternating current still had to prove it could compete on that ground. But geography was an adversary that could not be bribed. With direct current, doubling the distance meant doubling the thickness of the copper wires to avoid losses, driving up the cost of electrical lines. The math was so simple that even Edison's name could not contain it. 1 plant every mile, or 1 plant every 100 miles. Every new municipal contract was a plebiscite on that difference. The industrial map of the country depended on which system triumphed. The battle was fought in every city council that had to choose between Edison's Island Light and Westinghouse's Continental Promise. There was no possible neutrality. Choosing a system meant choosing a form of industrial organization, a geography of smoke and cost. Alternating current promised to generate power in a single plant beside a river or a coal mine, raise it to tens of thousands of volts, transport it hundreds of kilometers, and then reduce it again so it could light a bulb without danger. Direct current could never do that. In the end, the only referee was distance. The numbers did not lie. Alternating current began to win without fanfare. First one city, then a state, then an entire region. The engineers saw the numbers. The factories that adopted alternating current saved money, space, and operational problems. Geography won the match. The transition was not abrupt. Cities replaced one power plant after another as the economic advantages of alternating current became incontestable. Alternating current established itself as the definitive standard for electricity distribution. Edison's direct current systems became obsolete for long-distance transmission networks. The man who had invented the bulb lost the war for lighting it. Edison died in 1931, rich and famous, even though his system had lost the infrastructure war. Westinghouse died in 1914 with technical victory assured, but his figure was eclipsed. Tesla, the engineer whose work was essential, died in 1943, almost forgotten. Of that war, no visible monuments remain, only the silent hum of the current in your walls. The secret war behind your light socket was fought so you would never have to think about it, so the light arrives without asking how many chimneys were needed. That is the paradox of the great battles of ingenuity. When they are won, they become the most mundane of things, and in that invisibility lies their greatness. The greatest enemy of genius is not the mediocrity of others. It is the conviction itself that being right once is enough to always be right. Every time you flip a switch and the ceiling lights up, every time you charge a phone or start up a factory, you are upholding the victory of that bet. While the world sleeps, that war keeps beating, 60 times per second, in every corner of the planet.